Okay. So now we are going to look at the last couple of suttas, and this one that comes now is kind of a continuation of the previous one, but it's a little bit different. So just to have an idea what it means to be a fully awakened arahant, this gives you some additional information about what that means. So it's kind of fascinating. I think it's a little bit fascinating. So let's have a quick look at this. So this is called at Gaya Head, the Gaya Sisa Sutta. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Gaya on Gaya Head. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, before my awakening, when I was still not awake but intent to awakening, I perceived light but did not see visions. So we have just seen this in the previous sutta, what that means, and it has the idea of seeing visions in meditation when the five senses start to fade away and you're left with a kind of like a sun or a disk or something in the mind, which is very delightful and beautiful, and that is the usual meaning of this. But here it means something slightly different. So that's why I mean it's kind of a continuation of the previous one. So you see light, but you did not see visions. Then it occurred to me, what if I were to perceive both light and visions? Just as in the previous sutta, seeing both. And then my knowledge and vision would become even more purified. So after some time living alone, withdrawn, heedful, keen and diligent, I perceived light and saw visions. Because he was inquiring into the causes just like before, and because he is dwelling by himself and practicing hard, this is what he is doing. Not yet fully enlightened, but moving towards full awakening. But I didn't associate with those deities, converse or engage in discussion. So here you can see suddenly it goes on to deities, right? And so here it is understood that those visions or forms that you have in your meditation, they are actually devas you're seeing. You're seeing devatas. And this is what this is about. So that's kind of interesting, yeah? So the idea of having a vision of light and seeing forms in a meditation, either it can be something that is the beginning of the samadhi process, like a sun or whatever, or it can be like a devata. Yeah, either one is a possibility. So this is what so if you see a vision, you have to know which one. And they are different, these kind of visions, and so it is possible to know the difference between them. But there are also a lot of similarities. And the idea that they are similar is kind of to be expected. And the reason it is to be expected is that the qualities of the mind that give rise to like seeing like a sun or whatever when samadhi is becoming powerful, those qualities of mind are similar in nature to to being a devata. Devas are bright, they have similar kind of qualities as to these nimittas that we have in meditation. So it is to be expected that they are roughly the same. So you have one or the other, and if it is not a samadhi nimitta, it's a devata. That's kind of interesting as well, right? When you see the devatas in your meditation. Would that be interesting? Yeah. I think it would be quite fascinating to see that, see the devatas in the meditation. Whoa. So, but then he says, I didn't converse or engage in discussion. I didn't associate, I didn't hang out with those devatas, right? This is what he's saying here. Then it occurred to me, what if I were to perceive light and see vision and associate with those deities, converse and engage in discussion with them? Then my knowledge and vision would become even more purified. After some time, I perceived light and I saw visions, and I associated with those deities, conversed and engaged in discussion with them. So that's kind of nice, engaging in discussion with the deities. How are you, deities? Are you? Did you have a nice lunch today? Whatever. And so the idea here is to have a full understanding of what these deities are about, to having a full knowledge of them, to associate with them, and then to understand what this Devaloka really is about. Remember, the idea of being a fully enlightened Buddha is to fully understand the world. If you don't fully understand the world, you cannot make complete decisions about what is really worthwhile. So you want to have full understanding, then you can make full decisions about the world. And so this is what this is about, the idea of fully understanding what is going on. But I didn't know which order of gods those deities came from. What kind of gods are you guys anyway? Are you Chaturmaharajika, the 4 great kings? Are you the Tavatimsa, the 33 great kings? Are you the Yama Devas, the Tusita Devas, the contented ones? Are you the Nimmanarati Devas, the ones that delight in creation? Are you the Paranimitta Vasavati Devas, the ones who delight in controlling others' creations? Are you the Brahma Devas? What are you? What's the story, as they say here? So he finds out what order they are. Then it occurred to me, what if I were to perceive light and see visions and associate with those deities, converse and engage in discussion, and find out which orders of gods those deities come from? Then my knowledge and vision will become even more purified. So after some time, I perceived light and saw visions, and I associated with those deities, and I also found out which orders of gods those deities came from. You can see here how the Buddha is gradually building up like a map of the world, right? The various kinds of rebirth that are possible, the kind of gods that actually exist in that world, and gradually expanding the vision of the potential for rebirth and for the potential for existing in various kind of realms. And this is necessary because the job, what the Buddha is trying to do, he's trying to understand happiness and suffering, right? He knows that there is a problem with suffering in his life. Well, what are the potential escapes? Is it possible to be reborn in a certain heavenly realm and kind of hang out there forever after? Is that a possible escape? He has to investigate all of these things. And unless he has investigated fully, he will not know exactly what is going on. He probably knows already because he probably has an insight into non-self, and that non-self insight actually is sufficient. But this kind of just broadens out and it kind of fills in the gaps in the picture of what exists in the world. So he knows about all the orders of gods. But I didn't know what deeds caused those deities to be reborn there after passing away from here. Here is the human realm. That's always here. And so after some time, I found out what deeds caused those deities to be reborn there after passing away from here. So this is like Kamma, understanding the causality, understand how rebirth takes place. That's obviously very important because that gives you an idea of also of how long it lasts, of passing away from that realm. All of these things are tied to each other because if you understand the causes, you understand how long those causes will have effects and all of these kind of things. This is part and parcel of the same kind of idea of Kamma and rebirth. But I didn't know what deeds caused those deities to have such food and such experience of pleasure and pain. So after some time, I found out what deeds caused those deities to have such food and such experience of pleasure and pain. So food here is maybe not the ideal translation. The Pali word is ahara. You see the word down there, evang ahara. Evang means such. Ahara. And ahara really means like nutriment or nourishment. Ahara is what keeps those deities staying in that realm, what actually enables them to stay there. They are nourished by something here. And often the deities, they are nourished by piti, they're nourished by bliss. That's kind of nice, isn't it? Bliss is your nutriment. You just feed on bliss. Piti bhakka is the Pali word for this. So you stay in the heavenly realm, you're feeding on bliss, and you stay there for a long time. and you don't want to be reborn anywhere else. You're kind of very happy to stay there. And of course, that's precisely the problem, is that nourishment has a limit, and you can only stay there for so long. So these are the things that keep you there, but all of these things are limited in scope, and eventually you have to pass away. I didn't know these deities have a lifespan of such a length. Obviously, very significant in this context to know the lifespan of those deities. After some time, I found out that those deities have a lifespan of such a length. But I didn't know whether or not I had previously lived together with those deities. So one of the things that the Buddha to be finds out before his awakening is that he has lived in all the various kinds of realms, except for the Suddhavasa realm. The Suddhavasa are the realms of the Anagamis, the non-returners, and if you go there, you never come back again. So that's why he's never been there. But in all the other realms he has been before, and he gains that insight that he has been to all of these places. So he's already been there, and now he's back here again as a human being, and he realized actually it was for no good purpose, because you're back to square one again. Snakes and ladders, bang, down to the bottom, start at square one. And this is exactly what's going on here. Samsara is really a game of that kind of game, up and down, back and forth, roaming left, right, and center, never coming to a goal, never having a purpose, never having an endpoint, except if you follow the teachings of the Buddha. Then there might be an endpoint. So this is what he's seeing. He's seeing the insubstantiality of all of this, the various corners of samsaric existence, nothing really being satisfactory here. Then it occurred to me, what if I were to perceive light and see visions, and associate with those deities, converse and engage in discussion, and find out which order of gods those deities come from? What deeds cause those deities to be reborn there after passing away from here? What deeds cause those deities to have such nutriment and such experience of pleasure and pain? I didn't mention pleasure and pain, but of course that's also an important one, to understand the scope for happiness and joy, also the scope of suffering in all of these realms. Some of these realms have an enormous amount of suffering, but every one of them ends in suffering. Every one of them ends in suffering. Why? Because you have to die. And when you die, you don't know where you're going to go. And often the devatas in this heavenly realm, they pray, may I at least be reborn as a human. Because if I be reborn as a human, then maybe I can practice the Dhamma and I can do something good in the world, make more merit or whatever. But they are afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. Every life ends kind of with a problem. This is kind of very powerful and very scary. It kind of takes away the shine of that existence because you know it's going to end in a problem. And that these deities have a lifespan of such a length, and whether or not I have previously lived together with those deities. Then my knowledge and vision will become even more purified. So after some time, I found out whether or not I have previously lived together with those deities. So these are the idea of devatas or devas in Buddhism. So what do you think? Are there such beings? Devatas? You think there are such beings? Yeah? Okay. Is that because you are gullible, or because you are wise, or because of what? Wise? Yeah? Because the Buddha said so? Wow, you're a quick learner. Okay, good. Yeah? No, I can only agree with you. I have to, if I didn't, I would be very hypocritical. But it's fascinating, because a lot of people in the world will say this is superstition, right? Believing in gods and things. And, if I went back to my home country, actually I got two home countries, now I'm dual citizen, but my original home country was in Norway. If I went back there and said I still believe in Thor and Odin, people would think I'm... No, this is what I think these days. And it's kind of fascinating when you look at the history of the world and the history of gods and these kind of things. And those people who have studied the concept of God and how it has evolved over time. There's a English lady called Karen Armstrong, who has written a book called The History of God, which actually is quite an interesting read. I read it a long time ago. And the idea there is that the idea of God evolves over time. And in the early days, when they kind of, if you look at Christianity, it kind of started off with the Jews in the Middle East, and the Jews, they had their personal God. In those that everyone had their personal God, and my God looks after us, and your God look after you, and when we fight with each other, then our gods also fight with each other. That kind of thing. This is kind of how it worked in those days. So gods were very small. They were just an expansion of what it means to be human beings. And those kind of gods are very similar to the gods you find in the suttas. They're all limited. They look like human beings. They have limited life. They have happiness and joy. They fight with each other sometimes. The children don't behave sometimes. And they have all kind of problems. It looks exactly, very, very similar to the kind of problems we have as human beings. So being a god doesn't seem all that great, right? It seems kind of ordinary in many ways. It doesn't seem all that wonderful. But what is the interesting thing about those kind of gods, it is precisely the fact that they are in many ways similar to us, is also why you can believe in them, because these are the things we observe in the world. We observe things that are limited, that have both happiness and suffering. We don't observe things that are like the creator gods of the great religions of the world, because then Karen Armstrong, she argues, well, from those simple gods that were the gods of the local tribes, eventually they got unified, and eventually you're left with one God, and that one God is the creator of the universe. This is what you find in many of the large religions of the world. But that God, which you find in those religions, are actually completely outside of human experience. Because those gods are outside of nature, outside of time and space. Either that or they are permanent in some way. But things that are outside of time and space, things that are permanent, are things you can never experience. You cannot experience something outside of time and space because all our experiences are in time and space. You cannot experience something that is permanent because all our experiences are limited. And so the reality is that the only gods that we could possibly know the existence of are these kind of gods. The creator God of the universe is something that you can never know. It's something that you have to take on pure faith. Whereas the gods that we believe in Buddhism, the gods, the devas of the suttas, these are actually experienceable. So these are potentially real. So this is kind of the kind of argument that I like, because it turns the world upside down. So sometimes it's nice to turn things upside down a little bit, because otherwise we become kind of sidetracked by dodgy argument here. So let's have a look at the end of this sutta. I shall not... anyway. As long as my knowledge and vision about the deities was not fully purified from these 8 perspectives, I didn't announce my supreme perfect awakening in this world with its God, Maras and Brahmas, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its gods and humans. But when my knowledge and vision about the deities was fully purified from these 8 perspectives, I announced my supreme perfect awakening in this world with its gods, Maras, Brahmas, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its gods and humans. Because once you have seen this, you have seen the full extent of happiness and suffering in the world. When you have seen the full extent of happiness and suffering, you understand all there is to be understood about happiness and suffering and how you get to these experiences and all of that. Knowledge and vision arose in me. My freedom is unshakable. This is my last rebirth. There will be no more future lives. So this is another angle on which to understand the perfect awakening of the Buddha. And this sutta is the first time I think I teach this sutta. I taught it also in Malaysia when I was there a few days ago, but I'm glad I did, because it's a nice little sutta. A little bit different from what we normally see here. So, I hope you approve. If not, well, there it is anyway. So, now... there is another sutta here, which is called the Padipopama Sutta.
John, before you go to the next sutta, When for this sutta, when you say perceive and all that, it's not in a meditation that he saw it. He saw it after his comes out of his jhana.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So it's not, obviously you cannot do this in the jhana state because then you are perfectly locked in. But after the jhana, that's when you see these kind of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah. So this sutta here is about mindfulness of breathing and how it leads to samadhi. And the Buddha says in there that he practiced this frequently when he was a mendicant. Where does it say that? It says a bit further down. I too usually practice this kind of meditation, but it's getting a bit late, so I will leave this sutta out. This goes on for a while, and it's nice, but not. The last one here is really cool sutta, so I'll go for this one. This sutta is called the City Nagara Sutta. And it goes as follows. It's a little bit, it's the simile here, which is really nice, but I'm going to read out the full thing just to give you the full flavor of the sutta. At Savatthi. Mendicants, before my awakening, when I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, I thought, alas, this world has fallen into trouble. It's born, grows old, dies, passes away, and is reborn. Yet it doesn't understand how to escape from this suffering, from old age and death. The world is in trouble, but it has no idea how to escape the trouble. Yeah? This is what the Buddha is thinking before his awakening, and this is what we have been seeing throughout. But here, his solution is slightly different. Oh, when will an escape be found from this suffering, from old age and death? Then it occurred to me. When what exists is there old age and death? What is the condition for old age and death? Any guesses? Birth, yeah. Rebirth. Now we're getting really. That's even better. Yeah, rebirth, exactly. Then through proper intention, yoniso manasikara, I comprehended with wisdom. When rebirth exists, there is old age and death. Rebirth is a condition for old age and death. I would say it is the condition rather than a condition. Even though there are many conditions, rebirth is the critical condition, and that's why it should be the condition. Anyway, then it occurred to me, when what exists is there rebirth. When there is existence, continued existence, that is when there is rebirth. You exist in a certain way, rebirth occurs as a consequence of that. What is it that drives existence? Grasping. Upadana, a very important word in the suttas. Upadana, the idea of taking things up. You live according to the things that you take up in the world. All the things you do in life, all the things you have taken up, that some of those things, that becomes who you are as a person. You are almost what you grasp. Why do we grasp things? Because of craving, right? Tanha is the reason why we grasp things. Of course, this is now dependent origination. You will recognize that straight away. So tanha is the cause for grasping, because when we crave, we want to satisfy our cravings, and the way to do that is by grasping on to various things, holding on to relationships and possessions and status and all of these kind of things. That is how we satisfy that craving. Why do we crave? Because of feeling, exactly. Yes, we feel, and of course when you feel, natural to desire based on that. Why do we feel? Because of contact, or you can say because of experience perhaps. When you have experiences you will feel. You contact the world. How do we contact the world? Through the six senses. That's how we experience the world, through the six senses. Why do we have the six senses? Because of name and form. Name and form is your individuality. This is your person, your name, that decides who you are. Form also decides who you are. Your name plus your form, you will be recognized through that. This is kind of who you are as a person. So that can be called individuality or individuation or something like that. Why? What is the support of that individuality? It is consciousness. Ding. When consciousness exists, there is name and form. But what about consciousness? What is the condition for that? I then, through proper intention, I comprehend it with wisdom. When name and form exists, there is consciousness. Name and form are the condition for consciousness. So what this sutta is saying, which is very profound and very interesting, is that name and form, or if you like, your individuality, your existence as a person, that is the cause for the existence of consciousness. Consciousness, in turn, is the cause for name and form. So they support each other. There's a famous simile in the sutta as of the two sheaths of reed, or two sheaths of grass leaning against each other, and they support each other like that. If one falls, the other one falls. Yeah? And this is kind of the idea here, but behind the mutual conditionality of these things. And this is one of the most profound things in the Buddha's teachings, because what this means is that consciousness or mind, or the most fundamental aspect of our existence, cannot exist without the support of other things. And this is the critique of the Buddha of the existing religions of the time. The existing religion of the time was Brahmanism. And Brahmanism had this idea that when you die, then your Atman is yourself, merges with the world spirit called Brahman, right? The universe is like the world spirit. Behind the universe, there's like the permanent world spirit called Brahman. When you die, you merge with that. And this is the idea that mind can somehow exist on its own, right, as a world spirit. But this is the critique of that. This critique says that actually mind or consciousness cannot exist like that. All of these things depend on each other. Yeah? So consciousness is itself dependent on something else. So this is really the essence of the Buddha's discovery, the essence of non-self, that things are always changing, always conditioned, always depending on other things. But that is for another time. But that's just to give you a kind of a little bit of an idea of what's happening here. So let's carry on. Then it occurred to me, this consciousness turns back from name and form, from individuality, and doesn't go beyond that. It is to this extent to which one may be reborn, grow old, die, pass away, and reappear. That is, name and form are the conditions for consciousness. So if you look back in time, if you look back into past lives or whatever, all you see forever is this conditionality between consciousness and individuality and name and form. This is all there is. This is kind of the only thing that has ever been in existence, if you like. Consciousness is a condition for name and form. Name and form are conditions for the six sense fields. The six sense fields are conditions for contact, etc., all the way up to this is how this entire mass of suffering originates. Ending up with death, old age, and death. Origination, such was the vision, the knowledge, the wisdom, the realization, and light that arose in me in regarding teachings not learned before from another. In other words, it's the insight of the Buddha, not learned from anyone else. Then it occurred to me, when what does not exist, is there no age, old age and death? When what ceases, do old age and death cease? Then through wise attention, proper attention, yoniso manasikara, I comprehended with wisdom. When rebirth doesn't exist, there is no old age and death. It makes sense, doesn't it? When there's no birth, then you cannot be old and die. Yeah, we can kind of agree with that, but actually, it is actually a very profound statement. I find it sometimes interesting. You have to really sometimes reflect on these teachings to understand how profound they are. Because normally, if we ask about the suffering in your life, I have a suffering, I'm getting old, okay, take some Botox and you'll be all right. Yeah? That's how we normally think about things. Yeah, we do things on the surface and we try to kind of sort things out. That's how you resolve old age. Yeah, and death. How do you resolve death? Well, by not thinking about it. Yeah, that's how you resolve death. But it takes it takes a lot of audacity. It takes a kind of a genius to really look at the profound causes, because no one in our world, if you ask someone on the street what is the solution to old age and death, no one will say birth, right? No one will ever suggest that. It's impossible. It takes some kind of really far-reaching mind to think like that. It's a completely different way of thinking about problems. Normally, when we think about problems, we think about solutions at hand, things that we can do right now. We don't think in this kind of cosmic terms, yeah, birth is the problem, because everyone thinks, okay, maybe it is a problem, but I mean, you can't do anything anyway, so what's the point of even mentioning that? That's what most people would say. And that is where the Buddha is different. He kind of has this broad vision of things. This is what I mean, it is profound, because no one would ever think like that. Except very occasionally in human history. Okay. When birth ceases, old age and death ceases. Then it occurred to me, when what doesn't exist, is there no rebirth? Well, when there's no continued existence, when there is no driving forward of existence, then there's no rebirth. When there is no grasping, there is no continued existence. Grasping is what makes you who you are. It makes you exist. It drives you forward. If you don't hold on to anything, you don't really exist in any way. When there is no craving, you don't grasp, because no point in holding on to anything if you don't crave. Why do we crave? Because of feeling. So you have to, when there's no feeling, there is no craving. So you have to eliminate all feelings. Is that a good idea? Are you sure? What kind of life do you have if there's no feelings? Is that going to be an interesting life? The point, of course, of feeling is that feeling is maybe perhaps in some ways, the most fundamental aspect of our life, because feeling is what motivates us through everything, right? Without feeling, everything is meaningless. Everything we do is motivated by feeling. Every time you make a choice, driven by feelings, one way or another. Why do you come here to the BF? Well, because it feels good, right? Is that right? In one way or another, it feels good, right? Even if it's just an intellectual feeling, it is a good feeling in one way or another. There's something nice about coming here. So everything we do in life is driven by feeling. Without feeling, you wouldn't be doing anything at all. You have no motivation to do absolutely anything. You would just, I was going to say you're going to lie in bed. You wouldn't even lie in bed. You just, I don't know what you would do. So feeling is kind of, so the Buddha is saying here, well, when there is no feeling, then there's no craving. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, so what about feeling? Well, when there's no contact, this means experience, right? When there is no experience, there is no feeling. So maybe we should eliminate all experience. Why is there experience? Because of the six sense fields. When you end the six sense fields, then you end experience. No six senses. When you end name and form, that's when you end the six sense fields. When what ceases, do name and form cease. Then through proper attention I comprehended with wisdom. When consciousness doesn't exist, there is no individuality. There is no name and form. When consciousness ceases, name and form cease. Then it occurred to me, when what doesn't exist, is there no consciousness? When what ceases, does consciousness cease? Through proper attention, I comprehended with wisdom. When name and form don't exist, there is no consciousness. When name and form cease, consciousness ceases. Then it occurred to me, I have discovered the path to awakening. So this is what the Buddha is saying, and this is why the Buddha's teaching is so extraordinarily profound. Because what he is saying is that at the very root of existence, you have to eliminate, you have to make consciousness cease. All experience, all name and form. This is really the Buddhist path, and this is the profundity of it. And it's very hard to understand. And this is why sometimes you read these things and you think, whatever, not sure if I get that, but all right, let's see what happens. Let me practice a bit more and see how things go. And after a while, maybe you start to get your head around what's going on here. So often we have to start with the simple things, but it's kind of nice to know a little bit about the terrain that is ahead, the map that is ahead, where this path is going, what kind of conclusions it leads to. It's kind of fascinating. The Buddha is an extraordinarily profound person, and this is what makes it so interesting. And what he promises, of course, when you read it in this way, it sounds strange. But the real promise of the Buddha is the ending of all suffering, the highest happiness achievable by humanity, finding the true meaning of life. That is what the Buddha promises us. And that, of course, is extremely attractive. And that's really what we are going for. I have discovered the path to awakening. That is, when name and form cease, consciousness ceases. When consciousness ceases, name and form cease. When name and form cease, the sixth sense field cease. When the sixth sense field cease, contact ceases, etc., all the way to old age and death. That is how this entire mass of suffering ceases. Cessation, cessation, such was the vision, the knowledge, the wisdom, the realization, the light that arose in me regarding teachings not learned before from another. So this is the introduction to the sutta. The reason I took the sutta out was really because of the simile, because the simile is what comes up now. And I always found this simile very kind of evocative and beautiful. So I thought I would read it out to you as well. Suppose a person was walking through the forest. So what is the forest? Well, the forest in kind of the suttas is usually maybe the five sense realm. The five senses that are always around us. We are in this forest. We can't see very far ahead of us because everything, the five senses are always operating. We are completely immersed in this forest around us. Can't see very far. This is the forest. And one of the things that we're trying to do on the Buddhist path is somehow get out of that forest, to get a bird's eye view, to understand what is really going on. And there are some beautiful similes in the suttas of the monks climbing like a mountain, climbing the mountain and seeing the view, getting the bird's eye view, seeing all the streams, the roads, the fields, coming out of the denseness of the forest. Another way of thinking of the forest is just to think of it as samsaric existence. We have trees all the way around us. When you go into the jungle, even if you go here in Singapore, you go to the 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐢 Reserve or whatever it is, you see the jungle over there. It's kind of very dense, very thick everywhere. You can't see very far. And because you can't see very far, you don't know where you're going. If there is no path there, of course the Singapore government has made nice paths, but if there is no path, you get lost very, very quickly because you have no idea where you're going. And this is like samsara. Samsara is this winding road, this roaming about without direction, without purpose, without aim, not going anywhere, no idea where you're going because you are blocked from view by all the trees and everything happening around you. One day you come out of that forest and you start to see what's going on. You get the bird's eye view. That is one way of thinking about the extracting yourself from the forest through samadhi, through deep meditation. But here the simile is a bit different. So suppose you're walking through this forest, this jungle of samsara, roaming about without any sense of direction or purpose, and they would see an ancient path, an ancient route traveled by humans in the past. You come to an ancient path. Finally, there's something in the jungle, as someone has actually understood what is going on. And of course, this ancient path is a simile for the Noble Eightfold Path, right? This ancient path that previous Buddhas have practiced in previous times. And you come to this path, and then you start practicing that path. Following it along, they would see an ancient city, an ancient capital inhabited by humans in the past. And of course the ancient capital, the thing that you find when you follow along the Noble Eightfold Path is Nibbana. Nibbana is that ancient capital, this beautiful city in the middle of the jungle, inhabited by previous Buddhas. And of course in India they would have had such ancient ruins. And India is very famous for the ancient ruins. They have the famous Indus Valley civilization, for example, that existed in India over 1,000 years before the Buddhist teaching. And they may have been known to people in the Ganges plain as well. This kind of magnificent Harappan civilization, as it is known, in the Indus Valley, which was really magnificent when it was at its height. So these were things that were known at that time. And this ancient capital was lovely, complete with parks, groves, lotus ponds, and embankments. And you can imagine that this is like a simile for maybe the jhanas and the various stages of awakening. These are the parks and the groves of this ancient city of Nibbana. Then that person will inform a king or the minister, "Please, sir, you should know this. While walking through the forest, I saw an ancient path, an ancient route traveled by humans in the past." Informing, this is the Buddha starting to teach the Dhamma. He's informing other people about his discovery. The Buddha arises in the world, finding the ancient city. He informs others the Dhamma coming into existence. Following it along, I saw an ancient city, an ancient capital inhabited by humans in the past. It was lovely, complete with parks, groves, lotus ponds, and embankments. Sir, you should rebuild that city. He's sending his monks forth into the world, teach the Dhamma for the benefit and the happiness of gods and humans. Then that king or the minister would have that city rebuilt. People will practice in the same way, and as they practice in the same way, Buddhism, the Dhamma, becomes strong in the world, and this is the rebuilding of that city. And after some time, that city was successful and prosperous, full of people, attained to growth and to expansion. In the same way, I saw an ancient path, an ancient route traveled by the fully awakened Buddhas in the past. And what is that ancient path, the ancient road traveled by fully awakened Buddhas in the past? It is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. That is right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right stillness. This is that ancient path, the ancient road traveled by fully awakened Buddhas in the past. Following it, I directly knew old age and death, their origin, their cessation, the practice that leads to their cessation. Following it along, I directly knew rebirth, continued existence, grasping, craving, feeling, contact, the six sense fields, name and form, consciousness. Following it along, I directly knew choices, sankharas. Now sankharas come as well, their origin, their cessation, and the practice that leads to their cessation. Having directly known this, I told the monks, the nuns, the laymen, and the laywomen. And that's how the spiritual life has become successful and prosperous, extensive, popular, widespread, and well proclaimed wherever there are gods and humans. So this is the idea of the ancient city in the jungle. The idea of like we are all in that jungle to some extent. We're all roaming around, and hopefully now we finally become Buddhists, so hopefully we're on the right track, finally found a way forward. But it's this beautiful idea that what we're looking for is something fantastic, something really amazing. It's like we are on this adventure. We are following along this path. We don't really know where we're going. And as we follow this path, we occasionally see glimpses of this marvelous ancient ruin somewhere ahead of us. We get a feeling that we're heading to something extraordinarily interesting and exciting. It's like a journey of discovery. It's a journey of far more interesting than the discovery of various things in this world. It's an inner discovery of the most important things in our life. Happiness, the end of all suffering, and the finding of the final meaning of life itself. This is what this is about. So this is kind of really evocative, that what we're doing here is actually something that is really extraordinary and amazing. So keep on practicing this path, discover some of this amazement in your own life, and then you're going to really, then this is going to make a massive difference. Then your life finally will have some real meaning, rather than this roaming about, not getting anywhere at all. So, there you are. So I'm going to stop there, because now we have done enough things. So are we going to have another break, Eiling? Yes, we are. Okay, so Eiling says yes, so we're going to have another break. So.